Tonight, let me tell you the story of the feathered robe at dawn, a tale whispered along Japanese shores, where fishermen rise before the light and waves breathe in rhythm with the heart. It is a story of kindness and beauty, of a gentle choice that left the world softer for those who remember it. Close your eyes if you wish, and listen as the surf rolls in and the day begins with a secret. On the coast of Miho no Matsubara, pine trees lean toward the sea, their needles catching dew that glimmers faintly. At that hour before sunrise, when even the gulls are quiet, a fisherman walked with his net over his shoulder. He was neither rich nor poor, only steady, and the sea knew him well. His path brought him to a driftwood, log at the edge of the sand, and there he saw something so unusual that he stopped as though the tide itself had held his feet. A robe lay upon the wood, not rough fabric or fisherman's cloth, but something light as mist. It shimmered with many colors, as though dawn had already passed through it, leaving behind pale gold, tender pink, and the faintest green of deep water. He reached out and felt it brush his hand like the wing of a bird. He thought of treasures told in story, of spirits who left tokens in the world of humans. He knew such things were not to be taken lightly. As he held it carefully, a sound came from the air above. It was not the cry of gulls, but a voice, clear and soft. He lifted his eyes and saw a maiden standing at the shore. She was unlike anyone he had known. Her hair flowed like dark water. Her face held the stillness of the moon. And though her feet touched the sand, she seemed lighter than breath itself. She looked at him not with fear, but with sadness, and she said, "That robe is mine. Without it, I cannot return to the sky." The fisherman's heart turned. He thought of how easily he might have hidden the robe, for some tales spoke of men who kept such garments, binding maidens of the heavens to earthly lives. Yet when he saw her eyes, he felt only the quiet plea within them. He placed the robe gently into her hands. "It is yours," he said. "No net can hold what belongs to the morning." And he stepped back, as though making space for the sea itself. The maiden bowed, and as the first bell from a distant temple rang, she lifted the robe across her shoulders. Light seemed to ripple from her, like sunrise arriving one moment early. Yet she did not fly away at once. Instead, she raised her arms, and she began to dance. Her steps were slow, her sleeves spread wide, and each motion drew lines of grace across the beach. To the fisherman, it was as though the tide itself had been given human form, and he stood still, afraid to even breathe too loud. The robe flowed with her, silk whispering against air, catching the colors of dawn, as though she painted the sky with every turn. Her dance spoke of gratitude, but also of balance, the way humans and spirits touch one another's worlds without chains. When the final note of the temple bell faded, she folded her arms and bowed again. "Kindness," she said softly, "is what makes beauty linger." Then, like mist, she rose and was gone, leaving only the hush of surf and the fisherman's steady breath. In later years, people remembered this story as Hagoromo, the tale of the feather robe. Some told it on stage as No, where actors in robes of shimmering silk moved with gestures both precise and slow, echoing the calm of dawn. Some whispered it, along the coast, where fishermen listened to waves and wondered if they too might glimpse a robe across driftwood. Each telling carried the same core, a human heart that chose kindness instead of possession, and a heavenly maiden who answered not with thunder, but with dance. The story, like the robe itself, became a garment of many layers. In one version, the fisherman keeps the robe for a moment, hesitating, caught between wonder and desire. In another, he is tempted to keep it forever, but the maiden's tears soften him. Yet always, the end bends toward mercy. Always, he returns what is not his to keep. And always, the maiden's dance lingers in memory, as soft as morning tide. If you listen closely, You may hear in this story the echo of older dreams. Across many lands, there are tales of swan maidens who remove feathered cloaks, bathing in lakes and rivers, their freedom bound by what they wear. Some of those stories end sadly, with captivity and flight. Yet here, on a Japanese shore, the robe is given back, and the maiden's gift is beauty itself, shared for a breath of time. Perhaps this tells us something about dawn, that it belongs to no one, yet everyone receives it. And so the fisherman, though never named in the play, becomes every listener. We too hold moments of choice, shimmering and delicate, where we might clutch or release. And when we release, beauty comes back to us in forms we do not expect. A dance, a sunrise, a memory that steadies the heart. That is why, even centuries later, the pine trees still lean toward the sea at Miho no Matsubara, as though bowing with respect, keeping the shore like a shrine. Tonight, as you rest, imagine the robe laid upon driftwood, colors shifting with each breath of air. Imagine the faint sound of koto strings, their notes falling like dewdrops. The sea is calm, the dawn is patient, and the story waits only to remind us that kindness is the light we can always give. And when you close your eyes, perhaps you too will see her dance, slow and serene, a gesture of thanks carried by the wind. The fisherman stood long after the maiden's figure dissolved into morning light. Around him, the beach slowly stirred awake, gulls calling, the tide stretching farther, and pine branches whispering. Yet his heart was still, as though he had been given not only a vision, but a rhythm to carry into his days. He returned to his small hut near the shore, his net still folded, his work untouched. Yet he did not feel lacking. For some encounters are harvest enough. In the evenings that followed, when he mended his nets by lantern light, he sometimes thought he heard the faint swish of silk outside his door. Perhaps it was only the sea breeze against the pines, or perhaps it was the robe remembering his touch. He did not tell many of what he had seen. To share too freely might invite disbelief, or worse, greed. Instead, he let the story rest inside him, like an ember that glows without needing flame. His kindness was quiet, and his reward was a memory that made even imple meals taste rich. In villages along the coast, fishermen spoke of spirits who lived between water and sky. Some told of dragons curled deep in caves, their scales glittering like treasure. Others told of maidens who descended on clouds to dance on beaches. Among these, the Feathered Robe story found a home. Parents told it to children on stormy nights, reminding them that generosity can calm waves. Old men told it by fire, their voices soft, as if worried the maiden herself might be listening. And traveling performers brought it onto stage, shaping it into the no-play Hagoromo, where every gesture is deliberate and slow, echoing the stillness of dawn. In No, the story deepens. A fisherman finds the robe and hesitates. He longs to keep it, to claim a piece of heaven. Yet, when the maiden pleads, he feels the weight of his choice. She promises to dance for him if he returns it, and he doubts her, fearing she may vanish the moment she wears it again. But she assures him, a heavenly maiden does not speak falsehood. Moved, he returns the robe, and she begins the celestial dance, the music of flutes and drums rising like wind through pine. The audience watches as her sleeves drift like clouds, and when the dance ends, she disappears beyond Mount Fuji, leaving the fisherman and all of us gazing upward. This staging carries more than entertainment. Each step of the dance is a meditation, a reminder that beauty exists not to be seized, but to be witnessed. The fisherman's role is small. He kneels, he listens, he lets go. Yet his humility becomes the heart of the play. In a world that often prized conquest and claim, Hagoromo whispered another truth: that true wonder comes only when we release our grasp. No actor needs to say this aloud. It is carried in the silence between drum beats, in the way sleeves fall like wings at rest. Some scholars trace the Feathered Robe story back to even older roots. Across Asia, tales of celestial maidens appear in Buddhist sutras and folk traditions, often linked to sacred mountains or lakes. In China, swan maidens descend to bathe, their garments stolen by men who seek them as wives. In Korea, too, robes of feathers or wings appear, binding women to earth. Yet the Japanese telling bends gently toward mercy, emphasizing the return rather than the theft. Perhaps it is the influence of coastal life, where fishermen knew how easily nets tear and how precious release can be. Perhaps it is the temple bell, echoing through mist, reminding hearts that trust can be honored. Even so, variants exist. In some, the fisherman keeps the robe and marries the maiden, only to lose her when she finds it again. In others, she leaves behind a child who carries both heaven and earth in their blood. These versions speak of longing, of the thin line between possession and loss. Yet the Hagoromo of Miho no Matsubara, now performed for centuries, chooses another path. One of gratitude without claim, of beauty shown and then allowed to depart. That choice, quiet but firm, is what has kept the story alive, not in tragedy, but in calm wonder. Imagine for a moment the setting of such a performance. A stage of polished wood extends over a gravel courtyard, pine painted upon a backdrop. Lanterns flicker softly, the audience hushed. The flute begins, its tone thin yet steady, like wind sliding between cliffs. The drums answer, low and measured. And then the dancer steps forward, wearing a robe shimmering with embroidered feathers. Each movement is restrained, each turn balanced. Time seems to slow, and you feel as though dawn itself has been folded into fabric. When she lifts her arms, the air trembles with memory, and when she bows, silence is the loudest sound. For a breath, you too are the fisherman, witness to grace. And when the play ends, when the actors retreat and the stage falls quiet, the story does not vanish. It lingers, carried home in the footsteps of those who watched. Perhaps they walk along the coast, listening for waves. Perhaps they sit at their hearths, telling children that kindness makes beauty linger. In this way, the robe is always being laid down again upon driftwood, and always being returned, and always lifting into the sky. The cycle is endless, like the tide itself. The fisherman of Miho no Matsubara remains nameless, and perhaps that is fitting. He could be anyone, a humble worker, an elder by the shore, even a traveler who pauses long enough to notice shimmer in the sand. His gift was not great wealth or lasting fame. It was the simple decision to let go, and in that letting go, to receive more than he ever could have taken. His life after the robe was ordinary, yet illuminated. Each dawn reminded him of her dance. Each temple bell recalled her voice, and each wave spoke of a world where heaven and earth brushed shoulders for a moment, leaving both changed. Tonight, as you listen, let the image of that dance rest in you. Feel the koto strings. Again, gentle arpeggios like drops upon still water. Imagine silk whispering as it moves with air, sleeves tracing lines of light. The maiden is not gone. She is simply part of morning now, part of every dawn you have ever seen. And you, like the fisherman, may find that kindness given freely always returns, though not always in the form we expect. Sometimes it comes as peace, sometimes it comes as memory, and sometimes now it comes as a story told softly, so you may drift toward rest. The fisherman stood long after the maiden's figure dissolved into morning light. Around him, the beach slowly stirred awake, gulls calling, the tide stretching farther, and pine branches whispering. Yet his heart was still, as though he had been given not only a vision, but a rhythm to carry into his days. He returned to his small hut near the shore, his net still folded, his work untouched, yet he did not feel lacking. For some encounters are harvest enough. Travelers who visited Miho no Matsubara noticed the same feeling. They spoke of the way the pines framed Mount Fuji in the distance, the mountain rising white and still above the sea. They said the sand itself seemed to carry echoes of silk, a hush that deepened. When temple bells rang across the water, some carried the tale back to their own towns, and soon the robe of feathers became not only a local story, but part of the fabric of Japan's mythic landscape. Just as dawn spreads from horizon to horizon, so too did this story travel, gentle yet enduring. In reflective moments, people asked what the robe truly meant. Was it a symbol of heaven's beauty, too fragile for human hands? Was it a reminder that freedom is precious, not to be bound? Or was it simply a gift of vision, showing how gratitude can transform even ordinary sand into sacred ground? Folklorists later pointed out how many cultures share the feathered maiden motif, suggesting that humans everywhere have long dreamed of visitors from beyond who bring both wonder and challenge. Yet in this Japanese version, what lingers is not sorrow or loss, but the memory of trust honored. That distinction makes the Hagoromo tale especially soothing, a lullaby rather than a lament. It is said that pine groves like those at Miho are places where worlds overlap. Their needles whisper when the wind moves through, sounding like many voices speaking together. To walk beneath them is to walk between earth and sky. Perhaps this is why the robe was left there, folded on driftwood, waiting for a human hand to make its choice. The setting is not accidental. It is an invitation, reminding listeners that thresholds are everywhere. We cross them in small ways each day, and our choices on those thresholds shape the harmony of our lives. The fisherman's choice was small in action, yet vast in meaning. He chose release, and in doing so, received beauty. In some later retellings, children ask, "Did the fisherman ever see her again?" Elders answer gently, "Every dawn he saw her, for dawn itself was her dance." That answer may sound like poetry, but it is also comfort. For even when we cannot keep what we love, we may still find it in other forms, arriving quietly, carrying no chains. A sunrise, a melody, a memory. These are all robes laid upon the driftwood of our days, asking us only to notice. In that noticing, we are already blessed. And so the Hagoromo story became not only a myth, but a way of looking at the world. To stand by the sea at dawn is to remember that beauty is never fully ours to keep, and yet always ours to receive. To hear the faint toll of a bell across water is to feel the rhythm of gratitude. To see silk shimmer in the mind's eye is to trust that kindness endures even when unseen. These are small truths, but like threads, they weave strong fabric, one that can hold us gently as we rest. Tonight, as you listen, let that fabric wrap around you. Imagine the sound of distant wind bells, their tones drifting with the tide. Picture the fisherman's hut, lantern, glowing faintly, nets folded for another day. He sits, older now, but still calm, his gaze turned toward the horizon. He does not long for riches or fame. His treasure is already with him, the memory of giving back what was not his to hold. That memory has become a robe of its own, feathered not with silk, but with peace. It rests lightly across his shoulders, keeping him warm as dawn breaks. As the story slows, let yourself rest with him. The waves rise and fall, steady as breath. The pine branches sway, soft as a lullaby. In the distance, the mountain keeps its silent watch, eternal and calm. The celestial maiden's dance is over, yet its traces remain, scattered across sky and sea. And in your heart, you may feel them too, the gentle assurance that what you release with kindness will always return in grace. So when you wake tomorrow, perhaps you will notice the first light on your window as more than light. Perhaps you will hear in it the whisper of silk, the memory of a heavenly dance. Perhaps you will find yourself stepping into the day with the fisherman's humility, ready to meet whatever comes with open hands. And when you rest again at night, You may remember this tale and let it steady you as the tide steadies the shore. The Feathered Robe at Dawn is not only a story of Japan, nor only of one fisherman. It is a story for anyone who has ever stood at the edge of choice, robe in hand, and wondered what kindness might bring. Its answer is simple. Kindness makes beauty linger. That truth, folded gently into words, is now passed to you. Hold it lightly, as the fisherman held the robe, and let it guide you toward peace. And as we close tonight, I hope this story has brought calm to your heart, like a shoreline lit with first light. May your dreams be as soft as silk, your rest as steady as pine, and your morning as graceful as the maiden's dance. Thank you for listening, and if you wish to hear more gentle myths, you may return here again. For now, good night, and may the robe of dawn keep you safe until morning.